Welcome back to the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. I'm Colin.
I'm past Craig.
Ah, okay. Creative.
And I'm future Craig.
And of course, as these two clowns alluded to, and we talked about it last week, we're going to be talking about X-Men Days of Future Past, which came out in 2014, a little over 10 years ago. And now this is one of the few X-Men movies I've actually seen theatrically, and I think all of us were together when we saw it. It
Well,
came out in the crowded month of May 2014.
I was gonna mention that, like that time period of at least that summer release of movies, they had so many movies. Not that they're all great, but there's a lot of movies that came
I
out.
think this came out. So if I'm not mistaken, I think May 2nd was Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oof.
May 9th was this movie, and then May 16th was Godzilla. So it was like week after week after week there were big
Yeah, 'cause
movies.
yeah, April had Captain America, the Winter
Yeah,
Soldier. They had the new Planet of the Apes movie. I know
did
they had
not
the
see.
Maleficent, Transformers.
Oh yeah, 2014 was a crowded year for movies.
I know there's probably a lot more that I'm not remembering. Well, I just remember a lot of movies came out.
I just remember that May because it was like we were in the movie theaters like every weekend for May.
Yeah, and even Guardians came out that year too, and
Yeah,
22
like in
Jump Street.
July. Yeah, yeah. So with all that being said, we've been talking about X-Men for the past month or so, covering all the movies. And with that being said, I already said that already. What did you guys think of X-Men Days of Future Past?
Oh, easy the best X-Men movie. That
Mm-hmm.
includes any of the Wolverine movies. I mean, better than Logan, better than everything.
Okay.
It's easily my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Daniel?
I agree.
Yeah, I think this is also the best X-Men movie. Now, whether or not people will break up the X-Men movies by like, oh, well, maybe Logan is the best
No,
Wolverine
it's
movie.
better than
I'm
Logan.
just saying, that's maybe what people are thinking. I do think it's the best X-Men movie. I've seen this one the most, actually. I think it's this one and then X2 a little bit. Because, like, I think I said before when we first started, I haven't seen the X-Men movies a whole lot, but Days of Future Past is definitely the one that I did see the most. And in my hubris, I actually did watch some of the Rogue Cut. And I didn't finish the Rogue Cut because I can kind of figured where it lined up with the theatrical cut. So I've only seen about half of it. And I'm just going to point out some differences. I don't know if you guys have seen the Rogue Cut.
I remember seeing it years ago, just out of
I think it was
curiosity,
on
and then
FX. They showed it years ago.
yeah, just out of curiosity, I remember I saw it a while ago, and like nothing really substantial. And I didn't know this at the time, but apparently that was a producer or someone stepped in and said, "I think we should change this. It doesn't really work." And whoever's idea that was, brilliant. I think it ended up being better that they cut all that stuff.
Yeah, because so real quick before we get into the actual movie, with the Rogue Cut, the major differences only happen about halfway through the movie, where they a little over halfway, where they introduce Rogue, where she's being experimented on at the old X Mansion. This is after Wolverine injures Kitty, and it's Magneto, Charles, and Bobby. They go to the X Mansion to rescue Rogue. Charles is in the whatever the Blackbird it's called. I forget what it's called. The X Bird. Then when they break out Rogue, Sentinels attack and Bobby is killed at that point. And then that's when Rogue takes over for Kitty after she's injured. Other stuff that gets rearranged a little bit was in the Rogue Cut. Raven actually visits the X Mansion and talks with Hank. She kisses him a little bit. Then she destroys Cerebro. Then the next day, Hank, Wolverine, and Charles see the aftermath, and then it cuts to Hank talking about his river theory, how whatever he said, like the river will settle and the same things might happen anyway. In the theatrical cut, it's just I wrote it down. In the theatrical cut, it's oh, I thought I wrote it down.
When he actually tries to
Oh
use
yeah,
it, right?
after Charles contacts Mystique, then it cuts to Hank talking about his river theory. That's how it lined up in the theatrical cut. Just a little interesting. Also, in the theatrical cut, when Magneto, Bobby, and Charles are going to the X Mansion, it was intercut with Magneto breaking out in the 70s. Just
Oh,
little.
wait, breaking out of prison or
No,
when
no,
he?
sorry, I'm sorry. When he was getting his helmet,
Yeah,
it
okay,
was
yeah, because I
intercut
was.
with that, with the future of them trying to break out Rogue. It was intercut with Magneto grabbing his helmet.
I just want to say everything you've described so far, I feel like they made the movie worse, where the theatrical cut was much better every decision they made.
Yeah, it kind of breaks up the pacing a little bit. It's
Makes it
honestly, it comes down to just being unnecessary. Where, oh no, Kitty is hurt,
Yeah.
so now we have to get Rogue, who can steal her powers and take over. And then
I feel like it
Bobby is
just
gone for the rest of the movie after they get Rogue.
because I
So
know
I
you're
guess they
saying
reshot that.
the pace. Yeah, they did. They said they reshot some stuff.
Okay.
But you're talking about pacing. I think it's just unnecessary too. I mean, the story of the future. We all know there's a running clock. I mean, the Sentinels are going to find them. They're going to kill them. This drama of Rogue doesn't really help, and I like the fact that the Sentinels just find them anyway without that stupid tracker. Because I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things you missed. Like something got lodged in the ship, and that's how they found them. I like that the
Oh
Sentinels just
yeah, it
found
was their
them.
arms. It was their arms. One of the
Yeah,
Sentinels' arms got stuck in it.
Yeah.
it's just unnecessary padding. I mean, the way they had it here, where
That
focus
would
more on the
have.
past, was better.
So let's talk about
Yeah.
the actual movie now. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think there's two things I really like. One are the stakes, and they really set it up early on that this is their last shot to do it because they essentially bunker themselves, so then they can only send back Wolverine. And there's three things. The second is I like their time travel. It honestly makes sense sending back one's conscious to the past instead of physically sending somebody. I thought that was really good, well done. Especially,
Well, that was
time travel can get really messy.
well, that was actually from the comic.
Well, I know in the comics it's Kitty Pryde. I was gonna say Wolverine was actually I liked him in this. It was good that they sent him back. I felt like this movie was the perfect vehicle for him. Like him starring, like the other X Men movies, he kind of felt shoehorned in. This made sense. I think it was good for his character.
Yeah, and it also fit. Like he's really the only one that could survive the trip. I mean, some people weren't born yet.
Yeah,
Other people who are alive, like I said, maybe it's the blind couldn't survive. Maybe, whatever. If that's just a convenient excuse, but I think it was the best character to send back just for the story's sake. You can't have Charles set himself back and then there's no story.
yeah. Sorry, Dan. What were you gonna say?
No, it's no, we're past it. It was on the Road Cup, but I don't want to
Oh,
backtrack.
that's okay.
I will say, just briefly
Mhm.
talk about the comic, because originally Kitty Pryde got sent back. The future, because this came out in, I think, the early 80s.
Yes.
Funny enough, the story took place in 2013, which is probably around the time they filmed the movie.
Oh yeah, and then the movie took place in 2023.
Just a little, I don't know, a little neat factorino. Anyway,
So in regards to Kitty Pryde, I know a lot of people get hung up about how, oh, she can't do that in the comics. She can't send people's consciences back. That doesn't matter for the sake of the movie.
like I said, those are things that I would probably maybe more nitpick if the movie was really bad. If the movie's so good, I don't care.
Yeah.
When movies are good, you can get away with a lot more stuff.
Oh, 100%.
That's why it doesn't bother me at all. Yeah, it's made up power. She can't really do that. It's kind of tacked on, but whatever.
Uh, I like especially the opening scene.
Oh yeah, these
Like,
Sentinels are brutal.
there's no exposition. They dive right into it, and they show and not tell. Like you get a hint of what you clearly see what's going on. But I especially love the Sentinels. They're just so merciless and brutal.
Yeah, right off the bat, they show immediately how hilariously overpowered the Sentinels are. And I mean that in a good way, where they're just no match for them. I mean, honestly, like, what is Iceman going to do against the Sentinels?
I like how the Sentinels adapt on the fly. Like you
Yeah,
saw, like Iceman froze the one, and it just started charging up with heat.
yeah, that was really cool too, because I know a lot of people also talked about how they didn't like the designs of the future Sentinels, and I thought they looked like intimidating and scary, and it's cool how they
Yeah.
mimic
But it served the
Mystique.
function of the story. That's why they look different. It was because they were copying Mystique.
Yeah, because
So
they
I
could
understand
adapt
that's
to
why they were a little
mutants.
different.
Yeah, because
But
the ones in the comics, they look very blocky, and like they would have been
They
like
look like Iron
slow.
Man, essentially, like Iron Man in the
Yeah,
comics.
but they have them. I like that they have them in the early stages, like when they go back. But yeah, these ones were I love the design on them, like and how they just kept changing.
I was gonna say I like the fact that Sentinels were actually threatening. I mean, we
Yeah,
see in the comics, TV shows, the video games, these Sentinels are like they're made of paper. They're always getting destroyed. They get like the team takes out like 20 of them at once. They're hardly a threat. And now there's like three of them, and you can't beat them. They're unbeatable.
Or
Suppose you
or,
get a
or
hundred, and they're just paper. It's
oh,
like
you mean,
orcs.
when they sent the assault on the when they were bunkered in trying to protect Wolverine, they just sent like 15 ships of them.
Great,
It's
yeah,
like
it's overkill. But
overkill.
I mean, you could send three of them, and you could destroy them.
Yeah,
It's
they've
just
posed a really good threat, and that's what Craig was talking about with what was it, the clicking time, that plot device where they're running out of time to get everything done.
yeah, we've seen how dangerous they are. It's not like they can fight them off for long. Especially
Clicking
someone like
clock,
Professor X
ticking
can't even do
clock,
anything.
ticking
Yeah.
clock. I can't speak. So,
Oh,
oh, what was
I
good?
like
Craig, you go first.
that's the ticking clock, but the fact that they're just so threatening. I mean, you can't even escape them.
Well, no, it's the ticking clock, because you know the Sentinels are coming, and this is their last shot, and they can't do much to stop them.
Well, I get the ticking clock because they're bunkered in, but I mean, in some movies there's a ticking clock, but they kind of get like spared because the plot convenience. And these things are just brutal. You can't. They're gonna
So,
massacre
so
you.
one thing I also was going to mention that I really liked about the movie was they things get a lot worse. Like they try to stop it. Like they try to stop Mystique from killing Trask at the Paris Accords, and then things just get exponentially worse for everything. You don't really see that in movies where things just. I know there's like the typical low point, but things were just getting so bad for them, they had to readjust, and I like that.
Well, I guess you could say that maybe Magneto wasn't thinking straight, but I did kind of like his plan just to kill Mystique immediately.
That was his only thought.
Well, he's like, well, if you staying alive jeopardizes our future, I think we should just kill you. Like, we
Yeah,
can't trust you to make the right decision.
no,
Yeah.
I agree.
Granted, it ends up backfiring, like you said, because then they got her DNA anyway.
Yeah, and they
But,
had stupid Striker in this movie too.
oh yeah.
Maybe the one negative, them putting him in there.
I did think it was funny when Wolverine sees him and like kind of starts spazzing out, and you see like the really bad like morphing, like the young Striker to the old Striker, and they look nothing alike. Because I
Oh,
guess
with
to tell
Brian
the audience
Cox.
directly, yeah. Because do you remember that scene where
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah.
Yeah.
it looks so bad because they look nothing alike, and it's like to tell the audience this is the same person. We're
Well,
sorry they
I'm
don't look
sure those
alike.
two guys are like, there's like a foot difference, I'm sure. I gotta see what the actor's name is for the Striker in this one. Don't know his name. Okay, Josh Hellman. He's 6'2". Let's look up how tall Brian Cox is. I mean, I know he's no Peter Dinklage height. Let's see. Brian Cox is 5'9", but I'm sure he's shrunk since. No, it says he's 5'6".
Not a complete foot, but
Well,
I was
it's a
saying, speaking of
noticeable difference of height.
yeah, like demeanor and build, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
What
I
you
was
say
saying,
there?
speaking of Peter Dinklage, people always try to talk about how he wasn't that great at all, Marvel wasting a villain character, but he's not really the villain of the movie. If you watched it, the real villain is sort of Mystique in her actions.
Yeah, he was just kind of like the driving force of everything, but he wasn't the main villain.
Because I see stuff like that. It's like, did you watch the movie? I mean, do you understand how these things work?
Essentially, saving Mystique from getting her first kill would save everything. It was Mystique's actions that caused all this.
Yeah, so they were trying to basically save her in a way, save her soul, save her from, you know, committing this terrible act that destroys everything. Yeah, so I mean, he was fine. I mean, he's just a scientist, man. I don't know why he'd even sign up for this, but whatever.
Or give him
Yeah,
a nice paycheck.
maybe. I don't know how much he was paid on this. I thought he was fine. It's not a positive or negative. I mean, I guess saying fine's a positive. He wasn't bad. He didn't like bring down the movie every time he was on screen.
No, he was barely in it. I mean, again, he wasn't the main villain.
Yeah. I did think there were two things that were a little silly, and I remember my reaction in the theater when they said JFK was a mutant, and I was like, "What?" I remember saying that to myself in the theater. I was like, "What?"
He was one of
That's
us.
pretty out there. And I think it's pretty silly that for the JFK murder that no one in the I know that's going to be a revised timeline. Or no, no, not even that. In the original X-Men movies, there's no inkling of that he is responsible for murdering a president.
Yeah, you think when he got caught after X1 that they probably would have killed him.
The
But
guy
they're
who
not the-
who attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan just got out. Like 40 years from the incident, he just got out. And he didn't even kill anybody. He would be locked up in prison for life if he killed a president.
I mean, I guess we'd assume that he would have escaped at some point.
Yeah, but that's like you would think in the dialogue, like, oh, that's the guy who assassinated the president.
They probably would have given him the chair.
Yeah, no
At
inkling
least,
of that. I thought that was pretty silly.
but it gave us an avenue to introduce one of the best parts of the movie, Quicksilver.
I would say it was a good part, and then he was lazily written off. They're like, oh, he's too powerful. He could solve everything. He could just kill Raven.
Well, it's the same thing that Age of Ultron ran into. We introduce him. It's nice on paper, but now we're thinking ahead. Like, what are we gonna do? This guy could solve all our problems.
But not as much as Age of Ultron. I mean, this
Well,
is
he
so much
wasn't
worse.
as
I mean,
no, he wasn't as overpowered as.
I mean, you run into the same problem in Apocalypse and Dark Phoenix. You have to basically sideline him immediately because he's too powerful. I know we're
Yeah.
skipping ahead, but this is probably the best way of writing him out. Basically say, okay, your kind of job's done now. Go away.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, I don't know.
I know what you're saying too. That they kind of got rid of him easily because of his powers, but I feel like it's also the best one because he's not. This really isn't personal for him. He was just used as a vehicle.
Yeah, I agree.
Magneto. And yes, the scene was good. I think everyone can agree that was definitely one of the highlights of the movie.
Oh, yeah, everyone always talks about that scene.
Although it is kind of funny, this movie.
Flash.
I did think it was a
Oh,
funny
yeah.
take on Quicksilver because, in the comics he's kind of just like a jerk and all that stuff, but this one he's just more bored because he's so fast, which I think is definitely more interesting.
Whiplash. Yeah, I thought he was good though. Different takes are good.
That's illegal, right? You see all the stuff he's stolen.
I think one thing I also did not like was the serum that fixes Charles' back. I
Yeah.
thought that was entirely silly. I know it does, in a way, work for the movie because Charles is at his lowest point. The serum makes
He's
him not
essentially
use his
taking
powers.
heroin.
He's like a heroin addict. I was gonna bring that up. That one scene where he is like putting the strap around his arm to get the vein out. It's like,
Yeah,
oh my
and
God.
you hear the Beast Plover, like, I just take enough to keep it under control, but he takes way too much.
He's a serum addict.
I mean, really, like, it's a geez, man.
Yeah, I thought that was a little much. Again, not stuff that deters the whole movie, but just like little nitpicks. Charles looks like a hippie, even though he's supposed to be he's a bald man later on. I know it'll solve itself in Apocalypse, but
Well, again, they just had him lose his hair like a normal person. Like men lose their hair, but we'll get to that later.
yeah.
Or he just, bald. Like, that's something they could have just done with the comics. Like, it said he lost his lost his hair due to just his powers by the time he was, like, out of high school. Just have him bald the whole time.
Just have him wear a bald cap.
Don't worry, they do.
I did like Beast's redesign a bit. They,
Oh
like,
yeah, he looked a lot
made
better
him
in
look-
this one.
yeah. Like, he looked more menacing, even though, like, they didn't necessarily make him bigger, but they at least changed up his face where he didn't look like a roided up kitten.
Yeah, he looked abysmal in First Class. I just don't understand why they couldn't make something very similar to what Kelsey Grammer had. Have him wear a bodysuit if he has to. Like,
Well, clarify, Kelsey Grammer in X-Men 3, not the Marvels.
oh yeah, well I thought that was implied because
Well, you have to...
that was just an abysmal CGI disaster. Practical Kelsey Grammer in X-Men 3. Have him kind of look like that. Maybe not have the hair so long. Just, I thought that'd be pretty easy to do, but what do I know?
I was gonna say the thing with Beast, that's more of one of mine nitpicks that the CGI doesn't look great when he's transforming. It didn't look great at the time, it doesn't look good now. When he takes the serum and goes from Beast to
Yeah,
human
when
or
he's
human
talking,
to
also
Beast.
when he's
Yeah.
talking about the scene when he's talking to Wolverine.
Yeah, like,
Oh,
takes
it was-
Wolverine's like, what
Well,
happened to him?
well,
Oh
that one,
yeah.
and at the end of the movie where he takes his glasses off and transforms.
Well, that was
Uh,
the scene.
No, there's one at the beginning too where he's talking to Wolverine after they fight.
yeah, I thought he was talking about in the mansion, the X mansion.
Well, we're talking about both. Like they both look terrible.
Yeah, I don't remember the other one. I think it's also good that this is like a mature Wolverine where he's trying to like mend the problem. I also really like the scene when he tells Charles like, "Yeah, like I'm the wrong. I wasn't supposed to be sent. It was supposed to be you." I thought that whole scene was well done, and then he talks to Patrick Stewart, which is great.
Oh yeah, easily one of the
Great
best
scene.
scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I love how even, the young Professor X goes, you still have hope even after all that I've done. And there's that line which I know they repeated in Doctor Strange too, but just because someone stumbles and loses their way doesn't mean they're lost forever. Which I love that line from the movie.
Oh yeah. Great
Because
line.
because at the end of the day, this is about him regaining his hope and trying to help people. Which again, this is what I find I like more in movies with the hopeful, the good stuff, not the depressing, nihilistic stuff, which is just abysmal to watch. This is the better kind of stuff. Like even after seeing the worst of everybody, he still has hope for the
Yeah, he
future.
looks into Wolverine's desolate future.
He's like, you poor, poor man.
We should be laughing, but my God, the things that man has experienced.
Yeah. Well, two different strikers.
Yeah.
But another scene which I feel like people never talk about, which I think is also great, was the scene when right after they have that moment where he goes, "Look into my past," and they're on the plane going to Washington, D.C. Do you remember that scene?
Is it before they get Magneto?
No, no, no. It's after Magneto already has left them, and it's right before right at the end of the movie where they go to DC and
Oh,
Wolverine
that
tells
time.
them, "Yeah, remember these names.
Oh,
I know
yes,
you've seen the
yes, yes,
bad,
yes.
but
I was gonna
please
get to that
assemble the
later.
X-Men. We need you."
Yeah, I was gonna get to that later.
I never see people talk about that scene, but it's easily probably I think maybe my favorite or one of my favorites in the movie. It's only like a minute long, but I just love Wolverine saying, "Please, we need you. Assemble the
And
X-Men.
then he's like, Charles says, "I'll try," and he says, "That's your
Do
best."
my
Like,
best. Your best is enough.
yeah.
Trust me." Great
I
stuff.
get. Do you want to get to the ending then? Because I thought the ending was also like amazing. Not because of one particular reason, but it was like,
Wolverine wakes up.
yeah, I thought that was even the movie theater too. I thought that was so like well done.
Yeah, like
Are you? Wait, I'm gonna ask. Are you only happy because you got to see Cyclops again?
Yeah, well, so at the time, like nobody knew if they're going to be back. Like there wasn't any spoilers that came out, at least not that I know of. So
I mean there probably were,
I was genuinely shocked when they brought because I was thinking like, oh, if they bring back Jean Grey, it's like Scott has to be there. They're going to screw him over again like they did for 3 movies. And then I was so shocked and I was so happy that you see James Marsden's hand. He's like, "Whoa, pal." I think it'd have been cool if he like actually hugged Cyclops. I know he just said like good to see you, Scott. And that was good what we got in the movie. But I don't know. That'd have been touching. At least apologize to what they did to Cyclops. But
Well, I
it
mean,
felt genuine too from Wolverine where he's like, good to see you, Scott.
well, just seeing everyone alive and well, like you saw, Beast had a cameo, old Beast.
Yeah, Rogue it
Yeah.
still had her
Was that like a
powers.
mask he was wearing? Because they had him so far away, it didn't look like him. But
I don't. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't think Kelsey Grammer would show up to do full body makeup just to do a 5 second cameo.
For like a day and a half.
He spends like 4 hours in the chair for 5 seconds of film.
I mean, even 5 minutes, he was like, "Good morning, Logan. Late start." Like it was not even like 5 seconds.
He's not British.
That's what he says. Late start.
Oh. Make him sound like he's British.
A little Sean Connery in there.
Well, also you talk about that scene where he says like he misses Cyclops, but also where Professor goes, "Welcome back."
Yeah, that was well done too. He's like,
Yeah.
I need help with history for the last 50 years.
And he kept his promise. Wolverine said, "Find the X-Men." And he kept his promise.
Yeah.
Granted, I mean, we knew he was going to anyway, but I just like the fact that that scene, keep your promise and assemble us.
Everyone's alive and well.
Until Logan, where everyone dies tragically.
I was gonna mention that. Is this in the same timeline as Logan? Because Logan just undoes this happy ending, and if it's
That's
in a
another reason why I
different,
don't like it.
if it's in a different timeline, that's whatever. That's fine, I guess.
So I have to probably double check when we review Logan, but I think originally it was supposed to be in the same timeline. Then the backlash, they said, "Oh, actually, it's a different timeline."
Yeah, because that'd be, it'd be undermining everything that these characters went through,
Yes, it's a very dumb
undermining
decision.
the entire ending and everything. It's okay to have happy endings. It's entirely okay, especially with a franchise like the X-Men where they had their ups and downs, and then one movie angered a lot of people with how they dealt with characters,
Which
and
one?
then one movie killed off a lot of people, and then another movie angered a lot of people with the characters. X3 and Origins. So it's good to bring them back.
Yeah, and
Cyclops is
everyone gets their
alive and
happy
well, the
ending.
leader of the X-Men. Jean Grey's alive and well. Don't really care about Rogue, but she's alive and she has her powers. But she's wearing gloves.
Yep,
I
she's
was
back
just
with
think,
Bobby.
I was just thinking it would have been funny like if they screwed over Scott one more time. It was it like Logan's like sees Jean, he's like, "Where's Scott?" And she's like, "Oh, he's over there." And she shows like some guy in a horrible wig with the back to the camera.
No, you know what would be even funnier? After he's like, "Where's Scott?" And she's like, "Oh, he's over there," and it just cuts to an urn on a desk.
He's the only one that didn't make it through the
It
revised
just has like
timeline.
his little glasses hanging on it.
I was thinking like, yeah,
With his
everyone
leather
gets
jacket
saved.
over it too.
Everyone gets saved except for Scott. He still somehow dies in X3.
Yeah,
I know that would have been a big fu, but at least that would have been a funny fu.
I don't think I've been laughing if I saw in the theater. Just cut to an urn, a Cyclops. I've been terrible.
Oh yeah, we're making yeah.
But yeah, I love the ending too. It's probably I know the scene with him and Charles and old Charles was probably the best in the movie, but definitely at the end too. And the scene with Wolverine asking Charles to save the X-Men to assemble
I
them.
also really like the the scene with Charles and Magneto on the plane. Not talking about JFK being a mutant, but everything else.
Oh, like they're
Where
arguing.
where that the arguing, and then also when Magneto comes back later, and he actually apologizes for what happened to him on the beach. Like they still like of all them, he never meant to hurt Charles.
Fancy a game of chess? I do think, however, if we're going back to the silly things, moving the whole baseball stadium around the White House, like, come on.
Well, I mean, the
I
symbolism
actually
in its
kind of
prime.
I kind of liked it because it was like overkill. He
Well, that's what I
literally
meant. It's
drops
like a
a
little.
baseball stadium around the White House, puts the Sentinels on it too, and is like, no one's getting out of here.
The
But see,
Sentinels were fine, but it was just a little silly.
my thing would be that you're trying to sit there and say we don't need the Sentinel program, and with that happening, like, yeah, we need like a million Sentinels right now.
He was threatening everybody on national TV. He's just showing a glimpse of his power. Like, Jesus, if that's not threatening, I don't know what is.
Well, so yeah, that's why. Oh, we don't need the Sentinel program. But something like Magneto running around, I don't know how you could even consider like, oh, it's. 'Cause I know again we talked about this that they're supposed to be stand-in for minority groups, but Magneto is not a typical like minority group. I mean, he is an existential threat to society. He needs to be taken out. It's
And
like,
what did our
oh,
friend Matthew Vaughn say about Magneto again? That he's a Han Solo. He's cool. What's cool about him threatening all the humans on national TV, saying like we'll come and kill you? What's so cool? I don't remember Han Solo doing that, Matthew. When did that? Was that
and
episode four and a
executing the
half?
entire executive cabinet plus probably some congressmen.
Yeah. Episode five and a half, Matthew? Which one was that?
Maybe Han Solo blew up like the Death Star, but it was like Death Star of like just minorities or something.
I also did like the
Where the Redskins gonna play now?
I don't know. I think it was a baseball stadium, though, was it?
No, it was RFK. That's where the Redskins played.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, where are they gonna play now?
I know a lot of people also like to complain. Just real quick, Daniel. A lot of people like to complain that the ending with Wolverine and that he doesn't remember the old past, and it's like, well, or no, he doesn't remember the new future. And people get hung up about that, but that's not the point. It's like Back to the Future. It's his old memories are gone. It's not the point of the
Also,
ending.
too, I mean, I assume Professor X would catch him up. I mean, I'm not really worried, but that the happy ending is worth that minor issue.
And plus, Wolverine's an old man. Like, not all of his past is gone.
That too. Everything after 1973.
Were you gonna say, Daniel?
Well, didn't Kitty say that to Wolverine that he would forget
Oh, maybe she did say that.
everything? I think there was a throwaway line where she said everything up to that point you will forget.
Well, no, I
She didn't say
think
forget. Everything would be different. Like you would remember a different
yeah,
past. We wouldn't
Yeah.
know anything happened. Only you would know something
because
happened.
Or the
if
people
that
that lived it
if
would
that was the
remember it.
case though, Daniel, he wouldn't be asking Professor X what happened for the past 50 years.
Well, I think you remember the wording wrong. But she said, yeah, you would remember, but no one else would.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Yeah,
Except for Charles, because that Charles remembers Wolverine now.
yeah, and
And
he
Magneto
was
too.
there.
I also like the scene of Charles and Magneto talking right after Magneto got injured, and he was like, "All those years wasted fighting."
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, now
Just
you
have
realize it when
a
you're a
few,
hundred years
few of them
old.
back.
It's funny because people were, I think, complaining the movies they wanted the young and old cast to interact, and it was just that's
It
not
wasn't.
feasible in the
It wasn't
story.
needed. It was
That,
fine the way it was.
but if you were gonna have two characters interact, I know Professor X was great telling him to give hope, but I think old Magneto should have told young Magneto like, "Hey, calm down. You're making things a lot worse by what you're doing."
Or would have old Magneto helped young Magneto kill Mystique.
They both kill her.
I'm sorry, darling.
I will say this is probably the best young Mystique that we got.
Well, she does the most in this one.
Well, it does, but she acts the most like Mystique, like an assassin. Because the next two, it's
Well, yeah, it's a problem in the next two.
I'm saying going forward, I think we can safely say that this is the best Mystique, young Mystique we got. Obviously, you can't beat the original Mystique, but
Honestly, if the X-Men movies ended right here, I would have been totally fine.
oh yeah, perfect ending.
Oh, yeah, would have been a perfect ending.
And maybe if they wanted to do a sequel to this where it's like the regular day X-Men at their full strength, I would have been fine with. I know they wanted to utilize the young cast, but like imagine having a proper X-Men movie where there's Cyclops, Storm, Jean Grey,
Remember those names.
maybe a little bit of Wolverine, maybe probably, knowing Fox. Beast. Proper X-Men movie with the older characters, I think would have been really cool. Following this movie, you can't do it now because Patrick Stewart probably doesn't even know where he is, and Ian McKellen's like in his
And he's
80s.
too. Wasn't he still doing Picard?
That's over.
Well, yeah, probably because like, why are you filming my scenes first all the time?
But I think that would have been cool.
I was gonna say, so usually, we do some research for these movies, and apparently Matthew Vaughn said that he wanted Days of Future Past to be the third
Oh
installment in the
yes,
Young Trilogy cast,
yes, I did
Young
see
Cast
that.
trilogy.
And Fox said pretty much, "Oh, this script is good. Let's do this one." Or this idea is good. Let's do this.
Which I mean, it works. He seemed pretty upset about it, saying, "Yeah, Hollywood's dumb and all that stuff." But hey, movie was good. People loved it. Did well financially. I don't see what the big deal is. Unless he has this great movie we didn't know about that wasn't made, but
Yeah, unless his Days of Future Past idea is better because he usually writes his movies. He co-writes them. And this one was written by our friend Simon Kinberg. I think Matthew Vaughn got a story by credit. Let me look it up. But Simon Kinberg wrote the screenplay, which is shocking. It's pretty well written. Yeah, story by Jane Goldman, who is Matthew Vaughn's or was Matthew Vaughn's writing partner. Jane Goldman, Matthew Vaughn, and Simon Kinberg. Screenplay by Simon Kinberg. Directed by that guy.
that guy's that what we're calling him now.
Yeah, I'm curious what his idea was, but I thought the final product wasn't a disaster. It was really good. And it tied up, it undid what made everyone unhappy.
Well, because he wanted this to be the ending, bring everyone together, but I don't know. I feel like this was just done so well.
Yeah, I thought it was great. And now knowing Matthew Vaughn and what he's capable of, I think I would still defer to this.
Oh yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, this is obviously I said my favorite X movie. If you were to rank superhero movies, this would easily be in my top 10.
Oh, 100%. has a 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, a 75 on Metacritic, a 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb.
It's funny you mentioned the 90%. I think this is when people are still being somewhat reasonable with the scores because now, people get like cultish about it. You have to get everything like 100% or 0%. Like a
Yeah, I
90
mean,
is a reasonable number. Like, yeah, no, everyone's not for everyone, but I
average
still
is
think it's good.
7.5 out of 10. That's pretty good. Yeah, don't know if I have much else to say.
I was gonna say, I remember, like, it's lead up to the movie, there's this promotional thing called like 20 moments or something, where it's leading up to, I guess, kind of explain the timeline between First Class, this movie, and then the future part of the movie. Did you ever see that website?
I don't think I did.
No.
Well, it's just going through some events that to kind of explain what things happen. Like, oh, yeah, Professor X opens the school, gets shut down. Uh, apparently, Quicksilver ran in the Olympics and caused a controversy because obviously he's faster than everybody, and he got banned from the Olympics. And there's some other like political stuff too. I think they referenced X3, the whole Ridge final act thing, and they started to go to the more close stuff like, oh yeah, we announced new Sentinels. Uh, Hank McCoy gets thing dragged to his home, beaten and killed.
Oh my God.
Well, can we? I was gonna say, can we talk about the brutal deaths? Like by the
Oh yeah,
Sentinels,
they
like
rip
the
apart
Colossus.
Colossus.
That was tagged him in half, or with Iceman in the beginning
Oh,
end
they
end.
step on his head.
Well, no, that not only that, but they ripped it off and then stepped on
Oh
it,
yeah, yeah.
and then at the end they just all of them just fired into him.
I
Just
I
like
thought one was
just
pretty funny. Was it Warpath?
Oh, is he the one
The
that they make blow up, or is that Bishop? I think
That
that's
was
Bishop.
Bishop.
Okay.
Warpath had the knives like jumping on people's backs. I remember he jumped on the back. They just like quickly grabbed them and like slowly put his head into like their beam to incinerate
Oh
oh
his
yeah.
yeah.
face.
Blink got it pretty bad at the end, where they all just started stabbing her to death.
Storm got it the easiest.
Yeah, and just chucked over. Everyone else is getting like ripped apart and
Yeah, she
brutalized.
died like gracefully. She gets stabbed in the back and then thrown off.
Yeah,
What was it?
unexpectedly too.
Yeah, well, Colossus and Bobby they got it rough twice because in the first fight, Colossus goes to square off with the one Sentinel. It like catches his punch, twists his wrist, punches him down, and punches and dents his head again while he's on the ground. It's like, my God.
Going back to what Craig was saying with that promotional website, I think that was a cool time when movies used to do that. They used to have like interesting promotional material.
I mean, no, not everything has that. And definitely not now. Nothing has anything, but just kind of to help, yeah, I guess kind of bridge the timeline of what was happening, how the future got so bad. Because obviously, I didn't talk about it all in the movie. Not that you had to, but for
Yeah, you
people
didn't
like
really
me who
you could
saw it.
piece together like what led to what, like them persecuting the mutants and then the humans who would help the mutants too. The
That
Sentinels are
was
just crazy.
because I thought the Beast
Yeah,
was
that
kind of funny, just because how realistic it is. Like you've seen politicians or people get dragged from their homes, just beaten and killed. Like, geez.
Or Beast.
or was it that opening scene like when that one mutant's like scavenging the body like the fields of bodies. They just have like they're just dumping the bodies out.
Oh, also in the road cut, it happens earlier on when Beast asks Wolverine if he survives in the future, and Wolverine's like sitting down on a couch watching TV. He just says, "No," but he does say, but we can fix that." Because Beast was just saying, like, I know I shouldn't be asking this kind of question. Do I make
Wait,
it?
so that was
It
earlier in the
happens earlier
movie?
in the road cut.
Oh, because
It's in a different setting than
I
in the
think the
theatrical.
final battle was the theatrical one was better.
Oh, well, yeah, because like there were stakes, and then they're battling the thing. He's like, "Do I make it?"
Well, it's kind of in the moment too. Like they're kind of fighting for their future. It's not just randomly, hey, do I make it?
Also, the possibility the Sentinel might just kill him right there. Also, I did like well, the star when they were talking about the time. They had the Star Trek episode going on in the back with Kirk.
Yeah. Oh, all three channels.
Oh
And
yeah,
PBS.
I did see. That was another thing I liked with this movie. Like, was they immersed you in the 70s. Like
Yeah,
the
the other
little
one didn't really feel like you were immersed in the 60s.
yeah, like they even had the guy playing Nixon.
Well, yeah, because he was president at the time.
But like no, but you know what I mean? Like but he actually was like doing the voice and like impersonation of him. It wasn't just like, they had some random looking dude.
Oh.
Yeah. Like
But
they
yeah,
just
it
have
did feel immersive in the 70s because like the other one didn't really feel like you were in the 60s at
Well,
all.
again, it helped that they tied it to such a major event, at least. And I know maybe not as much globally for other people, but for at least the US, the end of the Vietnam War, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah. I did like it's a minute detail, but I liked the like when they were like they had the conference um in Paris and they kept switching from the movie camera like the filter to then like a 1970s
Like
television
the 8
filter.
millimeter thing.
Yeah. I like that little detail. Like, because even when like it would show like Mystique running away, and then Magneto's like pulling her to him, and then it's cutting from like people's handheld cameras. I just thought it's a cool little detail.
Well, I thought that was emphasizing that like essentially the secret's out on the mutants. Like people now know
Yeah.
way farther in advance that the mutants are around.
Oh, no, I know, but it's nice to like they trying to immerse you in the 70s, like make it feel like you're actually there. But,
Well, I guess they definitely did a better job than First Class or basically any movie before or since. Because Dark Phoenix takes place in the 90s, if you remember that, and
uh, yes,
Apocalypse
I
is in
was
the 80s.
thinking honestly for this one. This is knowing that the rest of the movies came out after this. So at the time, I thought the setting of the 70s was fine, but now knowing, I'm thinking like maybe this one should have came out in the 80s, like early 80s, and then Apocalypse is the late 80s, and then
Oh,
Dark
for
Phoenix
timeline
is the
stuff.
yeah, and Dark Phoenix is the mid 90s or maybe
Well,
early
this
90s.
this taking place in the 70s, I don't think really affects the other movies. I think the other movies just screwed up the timeline even more. Like if this took place where it does now, it doesn't really change anything. The most of the actors' ages line up.
I think I would still age them up a little bit. Maybe McAvoy I would age up just a smidge. Like make him look a little older. Maybe yeah, the 70s is fine for this one. Maybe just make them look a little older because 10 years have passed and they look identically the same as they did in the other movies.
30 years have passed and nothing's changed.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that. It's almost comical at that point.
But again, I feel like because what they were going from,
62, 63 to 73.
I know 10 years is a long time, but if you're going like 30 to 40, it's not the end of the world.
That's
Or like
true.
25 to
It
35.
it
I know
you
you
know
do
what?
age, but
It's forgivable in this one. The other ones it's not at all.
I mean, maybe give Beast a better haircut. Beast at least looks a little older.
Yeah.
I like how Wolverine, the only way to age him was they put like a gray streak in both sides of his hair, like one lone
It's like the
thing.
Mr. Fantastic.
Well, that's what he looked like in the comics. He had like, if you ever see the cover of that comic, he has like the gray streaks in his hair, like the. I guess all Marvel characters have the right, like Nick Fury, Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange, Wolverine in that photo. Like the most popular place to put white hair.
It's how they all age. Starts with the white streaks in your hair.
Yeah, but like was like it was like the temple or like just that, and it goes to the back of your hair. It's like perfectly like done too. Like
I'm just thinking about the road cut, like the part you're talking about, like where old Magneto and Professor X have to go save Rogue. Like that would have just taken me so out of it. I feel like
Well,
it's
Professor X is flying the ship, and then it's Bobby and Magneto in the mansion. And they break out Rogue, and then Bobby gets killed because
yeah,
he tries to freeze a wall up against the Sentinels. I think it's the same death scene as it is in the theatrical cut. They just moved the location of where he died because he dies in the mansion in the Rogue cut, and he dies in China. And there's too much, plot traveling in the Rogue cut. They fly to New York from China, and they fly back.
yeah. And I like the idea that it ups the stakes. That's like, all right, they can't escape. They're accepting their fate. This is it.
Yeah, it's like a final stand essentially.
the last stand.
Well, I didn't want to bring that up. Don't want to mention that.
Yeah, because like it's like all right, you just assume with the way that the movie has portrayed up to this point, whoever is not in that bunker is dead. That's it.
Yeah, because I think the Sentinel program was experimenting on Rogue. It just took
But at,
too
but
much
see,
away. It wasn't
but
important.
at that point, like, what are they experimenting on her for? They've already created the perfect death machine for mutants. These things can adapt to anything.
Well, maybe if they just touch the mutants, they can take their powers and just kill them that way too.
That's just overkill at that point. I mean, they're
It's kind of the same thing, right? You can adapt to their powers, but now you can take it.
I mean, taking it probably. I still think Mystique's is better because you have no idea what you're up against. Maybe you find the one you can't take their powers. Now you just adapt. It's like, all
I
right,
wonder
well,
how Darwin would have done against the Sentinels.
it's funny because he also had the perfect abilities to steal.
You can adapt to anything. Adapt to this. He dies.
Well, actually, what would have been a funny callback is if they had Toad there, and you see one of the
Oh, yeah, that was one
set.
thing I was gonna mention too. Like, why is Toad there?
And it looks nothing like the previous Toad.
Hey, it
Yeah.
looks like a frog.
The other one was Ray Park, the guy who played Darth Maul. Just some like acrobat with a
This just
disgusting tongue.
this just looks like a frog man. I just that part that reminded me. That part made me laugh when Magneto's giving his broadcast speech to all the mutants, and it just shows the Toad like just in the kitchen by himself with that look on his face.
He's like flipping burgers. So, is there anything else to say?
There was a cameo. Was Scarlet Witch in this movie? Did they have a cameo
I
from
think
Holding's little sister?
I think they mentioned there was two other sisters because the mom says to the little kid, the little girl, like, "Go bother your sister" or something. Maybe that was in the road cut. I don't know. I'm assuming that's Wanda.
Yeah, I mean, because they had Wanda first, and I know they had the rights issues, but now that's long gone. But just remember, it's like saying, "Hey, it's Scarlet Witch."
Was that the
Like,
road cut?
I thought I don't remember because I thought it was in the theatrical cut too. Or it's at the end of the movie where Quicksilver's watching TV. I think
Yeah.
he's holding his sister.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the road cut
Okay.
though, the mom does say like, "Go bother your sister" to the kid. Again, the road cut's only like 16 minutes longer than the theatrical one. It said it was 148 minutes, and I think the theatrical is like 131, 132.
Yeah, definitely one of the few instances where I think reshoots was a net positive.
Yeah,
That's the
it
thing.
was unnecessary, the
This
road
movie did
cut.
not feel like 2 hours long. Like the pacing in it was
Yeah,
done so well. Like there was never a scene like I felt bored or like, all right. Like it never, nothing overstayed its welcome. Just, just well done.
I was gonna say too, this movie didn't really have that too many action scenes, which, for superhero movies, you kind of come for the action, come for the spectacle. This really didn't have that, except for maybe with the Quicksilver scene in the final battle. It was mainly just drama the whole time.
and you know what? When drama is well done, that is perfectly fine.
Well, I think of Spider-Man 2. I mean, that was mostly a drama movie, barely any fighting, but it's
Uh,
considered one of the best.
uh, the one thing with the continuity was at the end where Mystique's pretending to be Stryker.
I think they should just cut that out. Like I could care less about.
Yeah, that was the one thing. So I'm like, so he doesn't get
No, he
experimented on, but
does.
then he gets recaptured.
I think it goes back to Hank's thing where the river will.
But that's
But
proven
why is it
false.
Mystique? I mean, why couldn't it be Stryker
But
finding
that
him?
theory is essentially proven false when they right the wrong of the entire Sentinel timeline.
But some of the stuff, I guess, you can't write everything. You know,
If they
some
really
of the
wanted
stuff
to
are just
hint that,
are bound to happen.
if they really needed to have Stryker that badly, they could have had him. But the Mystique thing's what threw me off. Like, why is she
Yeah,
saving him?
I think it would have just been fine if it was actually Stryker like taking him to experiment.
I think it would have just been better if they didn't have that. So I think personally, because
I can
we
understand maybe they
know
drag him out of the water.
that the X-Men, or not the X-Men, Wolverine is experimented on in the 80s. The Stryker said in X2, he said like what, over 15 years, whatever, and we know it's in the 80s and X-Men Origins. So The experimenting is not going to begin on Wolverine for another 10 years at least. And it's proven again in Apocalypse.
Yeah,
If they just remove that, like Wolverine talking about what he remembers last, I think it'd been better if they just like faded to black or something when
yeah, you don't need to.
Charles and Wolverine are talking at the end. Maybe a nice push out shot of Charles's office when they just start talking, and then you could fade to black, something like that.
Or or you have them, talking. Like, what's the last thing I remember? And then it cuts. It shows the door open, and Scott comes in about to say a line, and then they cut it.
Or we just decapitate Cyclops. All the goodwill lost. Was that the last thing we see, though?
And then we see Cyclops he slips down the staircase and just breaks his neck and dies.
Riding his motorcycle.
Yeah, he died because he didn't wear a helmet.
But what was the last thing we don't see is Wolverine being rescued by maybe not Stryker. It's Apocalypse. Ooh.
Oh, what?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That's the
Yeah,
post-credit scene.
that's right. That's right. The little blue boy assembling
In
pyramids.
Sabanu.
Well, he's like overpowered. Like, how are you supposed to beat this guy? He's assembling the pyramids with his mind. I mean, how are you supposed to beat that guy?
Well, I guess that's a nice segue into what we're going to be talking about next week. So we'll be talking about X-Men Apocalypse. So, boys, give your final thoughts about this movie before we get into the wildly disappointing X-Men Apocalypse next week. What did you guys? Final thoughts. Final thoughts.
Like I've been saying, it's easily the best X-Men
Yes,
movie.
I know.
It's better than Logan.
Just for the people listening at home.
Just out of curiosity, Craig,
Highly recommend it.
where would you rank this amongst your top superhero movies?
I need to like go down and make a list because there's so many now. Like,
Well, are we
if you asked
going to
me
rank
10 years
all
ago,
No,
it'd
no,
be
no,
so
no, no,
easy.
no, no, no. I'm talking about your personal favorites.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I know there's obviously
right.
some I like, but I have to sit there and make a list because there's so many
All
now.
right, so disregarding Captain Marvel, the Eternals, and the Marvels, where does that
Don't-
leave you?
Don't
You're
forget
not-
Rise
you're
of
not
Wakanda.
listening. I think after we do the X-Men movies, after we finish this nightmare of never-ending Wolverine running around just with knives in his hands, I think we should maybe do a tier list of superhero movies. I know, Craig, you said you maybe wanted to rank all the X-Men movies in our last episode, or that could be a separate episode. I don't know. But we could do something like that where we could rank all of our favorite superhero movies because I know Craig said this is in his top 10. I agree. I really like this too. Best
Yeah.
X-Men movie, one of the best superhero movies. It has everything you can want. Good drama, good action, good moments. Well done.
Naked Hugh Jackman.
Natty naked Hugh Jackman, yep.
Natty
naked.
Natty Daddy.
We all know who that was for.
He's a little too old for that guy.
That's true.
So, with all that being said, this has been the Unbiased Opinion, where everyone's opinion is biased except ours. Colin?
I'm future Craig.
He's not going to say anything. Whatever. He's future Daniel from the erased timeline. We will see you next week.